In a quiet Nevada bar, a group of aggressive bikers made the mistake of threatening Steven Seagal, unaware of his real black belt skills. What happened next shocked everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. It was a cold Friday night in a small Nevada desert town, the kind of place where neon signs buzz louder than the people inside. The old wooden bar at the end of Route 50 had seen hundreds of rough nights, but nothing like the one about to unfold. Steven had stopped there quietly, hopping to grab a simple meal after a long day of traveling for a charity event in Reno. Wearing a plain black jacket and sunglasses, even at night, he blended surprisingly well with the truckers and locals. Inside, the air smelled of beer, smoke, and dust. A jukebox hummed old rock songs in the background. Seagal chose a corner booth, calm as ever, his posture relaxed but alert, always aware of everything around him. The bartender nodded at him respectfully. Everyone knew who he was, even if they pretended not to stare. But the peace didn't last long. Around 9 p.m., the front door swung open with a bang. In roared four bikers from a notorious local group, leather jackets, heavy boots, loud voices, and bad intentions. They'd been drinking somewhere else and were already looking for trouble. The leader, Tank, was a huge man with a shaved head and a scar across his cheek. He loved to intimidate people just to remind them that the road belonged to him. As they marched in, Tank's eyes immediately locked onto the waitress carrying drinks to Steven Seagal's table. He whistled loudly, making the girl flinch. "Hey, sweetheart," he growled, "why don't you bring those drinks to someone who deserves them?" The waitress ignored him and hurried to Seagal's booth. Tank didn't like being ignored. He stomped forward, shoving a chair aside. "Anybody sittin' here?" he asked, pointing at Seagal's table. His voice echoed across the bar. Steven didn't move, didn't blink. "Yes," he said quietly, "I am." Tank leaned forward, towering over him. "This seat's mine now." The bar went silent. A few locals exchanged worried looks. They knew these bikers didn't back down, and they never picked fair fights. But Steven wasn't a man who needed size or noise. He just watched Tank with calm eyes, as if studying a child throwing a tantrum. "I'm just here to eat," said softly. "No trouble." But Tank wanted trouble. He slammed his hand on the table so hard the plates rattled. "You think you're tough 'cause you're in some movies? I heard you do karate or some Hollywood nonsense." A small smile formed on Seagal's face. "It's not nonsense." One of the bikers behind Tank laughed loudly. "Let's teach the old man some respect." The waitress stepped back in fear. A couple sitting near the jukebox hurried out the door, but Seagal remained still, breathing slow, his hands loose on the table. Tank cracked his knuckles. "Stand up," he ordered, "right now." Steven raised his eyes, calm but sharp. "You really don't want me to do that?" Tank smirked, thinking Elle was scared. But he had no idea. The man he was threatening held a black belt, decades of real combat training, and a lifetime of discipline that could break a man before he even realized what happened. And Tank was seconds away from learning that the hard way. Tank stepped even closer, his breath heavy with the smell of whiskey. The entire bar held still, every eye fixed on the showdown forming in the center of the room. Steven slowly pushed back his chair, the wood scraping gently against the floor. He rose, not fast, not aggressive, just calm, controlled, like a storm gathering without making a sound. Tank grinned. "Finally, let's see what you've got, movie hero." Steven looked at him with the same stillness he'd carried his whole life, the kind of silence that comes from absolute confidence. "Walk away," he said softly. But Tank wasn't listening. He swung first, an enormous, clumsy punch fueled by anger rather than skill. Steven didn't move until the last millisecond. Then, with a small shift of his body, he guided Tank's arm past him and tapped the biker's wrist. The force of Tank's own momentum sent him stumbling forward like a bull charging into empty space. The entire bar gasped. Tank recovered, embarrassed now, and roared with anger. Lucky shot. The second punch came faster, but Steven's response was even faster. He stepped in, caught Tank's arm, twisted gently, and with one precise movement, dropped the giant biker to his knees. It looked effortless, almost too quiet, too easy. The sound of Tank hitting the floor echoed through the bar like a dropped log. Another biker rushed in. Steven barely turned his head. With a controlled step and a quick palm strike, he sent the man flying backward, crashing into a table. Chairs toppled, glasses shattered. The third biker hesitated, but pride pushed him forward. He grabbed a pool cue and swung wildly. Steven ducked smoothly, slid forward, and tapped the biker's shoulder with 2 fingers, a pressure point. The man's arm went numb instantly, and he dropped the cue with a confused look. Steven guided him gently to the ground. "Stay down," he said. By now, everyone in the bar was frozen in awe. The bartender, who'd seen bar fights for 20 years, whispered, "This ain't a fight, this is a lesson." Tank, furious and shaking with humiliation, tried to rise again. Steven stepped toward him, slow and measured. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He simply looked Tank in the eyes. "This is your last chance," he said. Tank lunged, one final hopeless attempt. Steven shifted his weight, used Tank's force, and flipped him cleanly onto his back. The bar shook. Tank groaned, staring up at the lights, all the fight drained from his oversized body. It was over. Steven stepped back, adjusting his jacket like nothing had happened. "Respect is earned," he said quietly. The room applauded, not wildly, but with deep gratitude. The waitress approached him, still shaken. "Thank you, I didn't know what they were going to do." Steven gave a small nod, "Just glad you're safe." Tank and his crew crawled to their feet, avoiding eye contact. The tough bikers who had marched in ready to dominate the night now limped out in silence, their pride shattered. As the door closed behind them, the bartender shook his head. "Hollywood or not, that man's the real deal." Steven smiled faintly, paid for his meal, and walked out into the cool Nevada night. A legend who didn't need cameras, scripts, or spotlights to prove who he truly was.